grab a balloon and float on over, and we are going to witness the end of It. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, homies. It's me, Andrew Fantasia. Welcome to Thumb Together, and today we're going to be talking about It Chapter 2 together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Otherwise, my worst fears will come true, sort of, and I'll be chased by illusions that may or may not be real. I don't know. I'm never really clear on that. Stephen King, you don't spell things out 95% of the time. 2 years ago, we got It. And it blew doors off theaters. A lot of people were loving it. They were like, hey, Pennywise, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was pretty cool. And I was looking forward to seeing the next chapter. I heard all kinds of stuff about how this was going to be like first a trilogy and then 2 movies, but also like a TV show. Do you guys remember that? You remember when there was like some kind of rumor going around that they would also have a TV show to like fill in the gaps of their lives or something? I don't know. There was some weird rumors of just how big this multimedia thing was going to be. But we got It Chapter 2, and we got it 2 years, almost to the day, I think, from when we got the last one. How does it work? How does this movie hold up? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say right now that I am pretty sure I like this one more than I like the first one. The first one, I'm going to be honest, I didn't dislike the first one at all. I thought the first one was a pretty good movie. To me, it just felt like... And once I rewatched it again, this kind of confirmed it in my head. But it felt like a watered-down 80s movie with a villain that I thought was not impressive. I wasn't impressed by Pennywise. I loved the kids. It's kind of underwhelmed on the Pennywise front because he was a bit too vague. And I get that that's the point. But if there's no real rule for how your villain works, and we'll get to this later, it starts to get a little iffy for me, especially when it's used in the way this was used. It's a very specific kind of villain that Pennywise is, that kind of doesn't really hit me the way he hits most people. But It Chapter 2, I actually ended up really, really liking the way it was laid out, because you finally see the adults and they have to come together again. But you also get little flashbacks of the kids and what the kids were up to, and you see snippets of their childhood that we didn't see in Chapter 1. I think that's pretty damn cool. I really like the way they structured it, and Andy Muschietti, the director, did this really, really good job of framing these flashbacks so they don't just feel copy-pasted. You know, you'll see an adult pick up a can and open the can, and then you'll see a hand reach into the can and pick something out, but when they pull out and you see the person holding it, it's not the adult anymore, it's the kid version of that adult, and you're like, oh, cool, we're in a flashback now. And it would happen so seamlessly with like the exact same lighting and framing, and even like the axis is facing the same way, so you don't notice it's a flashback till they pull out and you're looking at the kid's face. That was really neat, man. That was a great way to change it up a bit and do flashbacks in a bit more interesting manner, especially if you remember the old It TV special with Tim Curry, where it was just like, I think the first half of it was just like a straight hour of people picking up the phone and being like, oh, we have to go back to Derry? Ooh, flashback. And it was very jarring and just cheesy and really, there was no style to it. It was just kind of blah. Now, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, if it is even an elephant. It is certainly big enough to be. And that is the movie's runtime, because a lot of people are giving the movie flack for the runtime. If you know me by now, you know I really, really love long movies. I think long movies are something special. They don't come around too often, and when they do, you know that they're there for a reason, except Transformers. There's no reason why the Transformers movies needed to be 2:45. There is no reason. That they are an anomaly that I can't explain. But otherwise, when you watch a movie that flirts with the 3-hour mark, it's usually something special. You're not going to see the Wayans brothers make a 3-hour-long movie. It's usually a movie that has some love and something special put into it. And the It films have that love, I think. I think they are something special, particularly this one, which is why this one felt like it needed every second of its 2-hour and 49-minute runtime. I will say, though, and this isn't a complaint, I'm not trying to bash the movie, it does feel long. Some long movies don't feel long. Like Avengers Endgame, 3 hours, 2 minutes. It didn't feel long. When it got to the end, like near the climax, I was like, oh shit, we're here already? This is already the end? And other movies like The Fellowship of the Ring, which I love. I have nothing bad to say about Fellowship of the Ring. It's my favorite Middle-earth movie. That one I remember feeling long. I remember we got to the end, and they were wrapping things up, and I remember sitting in the theater with my dad, and as the credits rolled, we both looked at each other and we're like, wow, that was a long movie. And my dad's like, I know, when Bilbo Baggins had his party, that feels like so long ago. It feels like we watched that scene yesterday. That's how long this movie felt. But neither of us were hating on the movie. We loved it. We felt the length, if that makes any sense. The length made itself apparent. And that's no mark against the movie. And I feel like in this case, it did make itself apparent. By the time we get to the climax where they're fighting it, you're like, wow, I've been sitting in this chair for a while. This movie has been going on for a long time, but not in a bad way. Maybe it's just a product of pacing. Pacing is important in films. It's really hard to get that down pat, especially when you're writing them. I still can't really grasp pacing myself. It's something I have to sort of work on. It's one of my weaker strengths when it comes to writing. I guess Endgame was a much faster paced movie, so it didn't feel like that, but this definitely felt like a juggernaut of a movie. That's okay. I welcome it. Please, Lucasfilm, please tell me Rise of Skywalker is going to be at least this long, because I will be a happy camper. If the movie does have a negative, I think the biggest negative does kind of weasel its way into this, though, into the pacing thing, and that is a series of scenes throughout the middle of this movie where, minor spoilers here, let's just put that up there, Mike tells the other members of the Losers Club that if they want to defeat Pennywise, they have to do this ancient Native American ritual. And the way this ritual is performed is, first you need an artifact from your childhood. You need to find one, kind of go on a quest for an artifact, and then sacrifice that artifact. Now, this was actually my favorite scene of the movie when Mike was explaining this to the rest of the Losers Club. I remember just having this big grin on my face. I was like, oh, cool, so they're all going to go hunting for their childhood artifacts, especially because of the nature of it, because he says there was a moment that our memories have sort of tuned out from the past, from the events of it, Chapter 1. And it was that point in the first movie where the Losers Club emerged from that creepy old haunted house, and they had gotten into this big argument, and they kind of went their separate ways, and they didn't see each other for a couple of weeks. Those couple of weeks we never saw. We just sort of saw a quick montage as they flew by. But apparently, during those couple of weeks, something important happened to each of them, and we have to go back now and fill in those blanks. I just thought that was friggin' awesome, man. So you have the adults searching through their old hometown for these artifacts that are important to them, whilst at the same time filling in the blanks of what happened to the Losers Club 27 years ago. Wicked. That was outstanding. That was like this movie's equivalent of when the Avengers are like, okay, you got to find that Infinity Stone, you got to find that Infinity Stone. Go. We'll meet back here in 3 days. I love that shit. I love when movies kind of, they set a very clear quest for the heroes, and you watch them embark on it. So much fun. Fantastic. But the negative part comes in during these individual vision quests, if you will, because every one of the Losers Club goes through the same motions where they go somewhere from their past. They have a flashback of being tormented by Pennywise, and then in the present, they are tormented by him again, and then they get away. The thing about Pennywise that kind of irks me is he's always just like, ooh, here I am, booga booga booga, I'm gonna do something to you. You know, the kids will just be like, oh, it's not real. And then, sure enough, it's not real. He feels like he's all bark and no bite. That's how this clown feels. Like, they'll turn around and be like, oh shit, he's behind me, and he's like, wah! But it doesn't feel like he does anything to them. They just kind of run, and then they're fine. And his powers really don't seem to have any limitations at all. And there's a moment later in the movie where Mike talks about how the Native Americans sort of understood what this ancient being was and how to destroy it. And these Native Americans explained that Pennywise is a shapeshifter. He's a shape-shifting entity, but he always has to obey the laws of whatever form he's inhabiting. So I was like, okay, we have rules now. We have clear rules for this. But then that still doesn't seem to be relevant, because there are moments where he's, just like a spider or something, and two of the Losers Club crawls into like this narrow tunnel where Pennywise can't fit his body. So he takes his hand and shoots his hand into the tunnel, and it keeps stretching and stretching like a long locomotive and clawing after them. And I'm like, well, okay, a spider cannot do that with its hand. So you're not obeying the rules of whatever form you're taking. You're just making shit up as you go. And that just seems to be the thing about Pennywise that keeps me from loving this story more than I actually do is that it really does feel like that when it comes to the clown himself, when it comes to what he can do and what he can't do. And it just feels like he can do whatever Stephen King and the writers feel like they want him to do. That gets a little tiresome because it's like, well, there's no rules. It just feels too chaotic. And the Losers Club are going on these separate vision quests simultaneously, and each of them is encountering Pennywise. So can Pennywise also be in 6 different places at once? Like, what can he not do? I wish somebody just kind of spelled that out. I know there's people who prefer just like the mystery and they don't want to know, but I don't know. This kind of gets under my skin. I'd love to know what Pennywise can not do. Because it seems like that's a very short list of things. Now I'm going to put this small spoiler warning up again because I want to talk about, not in detail, but I do want to talk about when Pennywise is defeated. Because in case you didn't know, spoilers, this is the end. Look, that poster right there says it ends. There's no It Chapter 3. And I will say this, not to keep bringing up Lord of the Rings here, but I remember sitting in the theater during The Return of the King, okay? And the whole world had been obsessed with Lord of the Rings for the past couple years because these movies had been so fantastic. And I was in a full theater and everybody was, watching Return of the King, and it was 3 hours and God knows how many minutes. It was a big, ginormous, epic movie. And when it got to the end, Sauron was defeated, okay? The ring was put in the lava and you saw Sauron crumble. There was this sort of moment of silence before he crumbled, and a big moment was made of it. And you could hear everybody in the audience reacting in certain ways. Like some people were like, yeah! And other people were just like captivated. But there was a general sort of hive mind consensus within the audience of that movie theater where everybody was like, yes! They got Sauron. We beat him. It's been 3 movies, but we beat that son of a bitch. Yes! There was that feeling to it, that communal sense where everybody wanted to see Sauron's downfall. And I feel like we got a very, very similar feeling with Thanos in the Avengers movies lately. I will say that despite the fact that I'm not crazy about him as a villain, I did feel, to a lesser extent, I did feel that when Pennywise was defeated. I did feel that sense of the movie understood, first of all. The movie understood that it was a special moment, and the audience was feeling it too. I could just feel it permeating the room where everybody was like, oh yeah, they got him. They got him. That is a special feeling, and it doesn't come around very often. I think, as far as my memory can tell, it has only happened with Sauron, Thanos, and now Pennywise. So it's great to see, this room that is full of God knows how many different sorts of people all kind of come together for a couple of hours and agree on one thing and agree that like, hey, we got to kill this clown. That was beautiful. It was beautiful when it happened in Lord of the Rings. It was beautiful when it happened in Avengers, and it was beautiful now. So that was my second favorite part of the movie, is having that sense of community with the people in the theater. It's always nice when that happens, and I hope it happens again soon. I don't know in which film it could take place, but I want to see it again. But that's it. Literally and figuratively. That's it. That's it. Chapter 2. That's all I have to say on the matter. Much better than the first one, but I had a good time. And I think they ended this really well. It was a very sweet ending, a very powerful ending, and it did its job. If you're a fan of It and very long books like the book It is based off of, why don't you check out this very long book, Side Scroller, right here. This is a novel that was written by yours truly there, Andrew Fantasia. That's me. It is a sci-fi adventure romance that takes place in a world that runs on the logic of video games. Lots of fun to be had in these 618 pages. Oh, Christ. But seriously, if you want to buy this, that would help me out a lot. It's available on amazon.com.ca.uk, and you can even get the ebook if you prefer those. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. I'll see you here next time, and until then, adios.